Testing, 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 testing. Is that good? Okay. Hi all. I'm Greg Woods. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man with a big red, somewhat gray beard and blonde hair. And I'm wearing a dark green dress shirt, and jeans. I want to welcome you to the 2026 Institute of Theology and Disability. We are excited for you to be here. Be here with us in St. Paul, but also with us online. We have people attending in person and online from the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, Africa, and Asia. So access notes. For people in the room, there are gender-neutral bathrooms on the third floor. Then there are gendered bathroom on the second floor. We have a sensory room with visits, mandalas, seating, soft lighting, and a room 234 on the second floor. And take um take care of yourself. We have a really big space, so feel free to stand up. Feel free to walk outside of the room. Lay down if you want. There is we want to create a space of taking care of your body. So. I want to quickly thank our sponsors. The first up is the conference is being hosted in conjunction with the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at University of St. Thomas. We are also sponsored by Faith Inclusion Network, the can someone hand me a program? I was going to do that off of memory, and that was a bad idea. Because even though I've been looking at these sponsors, so the Faith Inclusion Network, the James Phillips Center for Individual Studies here, Disability Belong, the UCC Disability Ministries, Lindale UCC in Minneapolis, the Calvin Institute Christian Worship, Northeast United Methodist Church, JCFS Chicago, and First Universal Church of Minneapolis. So thank you all for we owe a lot to our sponsors, so can we give them a applause or hand waving, whatever you want to do? And then I want to recognize other people on the co-council. I will call people as I see them scanning the room. Tom Jones, Robert Mutson, Ben Bond, Angela Molly, Tammy Butcher. I realize I am butchering last names because I just call you folks names. So sorry about that. And we have Sully Christensen and Kathy Dixon who are here, and Rebecca Wolf who isn't here. And did I miss anyone? Okay, thanks. And then the chaplains are Justin Hancock. Okay. And then we put Merwin Anderson. So, and I would like to introduce Carl Yang up here.
I'm shorter, so. Well, good morning. I am Ka Yang, Associate Vice President for Inclusive Excellence. I oversee the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I am an Asian American female, and I have a huge smile on my face right now because I'm excited for these next 3 days. I am wearing a black jacket, a light pink blouse, and gray pants. So welcome, everyone. Before I have the pleasure of introducing President Rob Vischer, I would also like to offer a few thank yous. I am thankful for the Institute on Theology and Disability and all of the partners whose annual conference is hosted this year at the University of St. Thomas. The University of St. Thomas sits on the ancestral and current homelands of the Dakota. This event is a partnership that reflects a shared commitment to inclusion and belonging for individuals with disabilities, neurodiversity, and interfaith communities. I would like to thank Greg, Tom, and everyone who made today possible. Your expertise, dedication, and commitment to this work in this space is invaluable, and we are grateful for the partnership this year. I would also like to thank our internal staff, the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Stellar, the J. Phillips Institute, ITS, Dining Services and Facilities, as well as the student volunteers. They are out of school, you all, and they're still here volunteering. There is a saying that goes, it takes a whole village to raise a child, and I can attest that it takes a whole village to put together wonderful events such as this. And so my heartfelt thank you to all who made this possible. Now I have the honor of introducing a leader that many would say needs no introduction. He champions and supports the belonging and flourishing of all community members. President Rob Vischer is the 16th president of the University of St. Thomas. Some of you have heard him speak about the culture of encounter and about cultivating an environment where everyone feels seen, heard, and loved. Please help me in welcoming President Vischer.
Thank you, Ka. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are very proud and excited to be hosting this conversation. As Ka said, my name is Rob Vischer. I'm about a 6 foot tall, white male, middle-aged, Hair has grayed way too rapidly. Wearing a purplish sport coat. You can assume that most days I'm wearing something purple because those are the colors of St. Thomas. We are really glad to have you here. This is, especially being a Catholic university, this conversation is at the heart of our mission. The Catholic tradition provides one lens through which to view these issues, and the timing of this week's conference is providential. As you know, Pope Leo just issued his first encyclical, Magnificat Humanitas, and while this encyclical's central focus is AI, it has so much to offer to our inquiries this week. So I just want to take a couple minutes and highlight 4 themes that I saw come out of that encyclical that I think bears directly on these conversations. And remember, for those who aren't Catholic, an encyclical is written by the Pope not just to Catholics, but to all people of goodwill around the world, whatever faith tradition. So here's some insights I think emerge directly from this encyclical. Insight number 1. Our quest for greater efficiency must not obscure the dignity of every single human being. Here's how Pope Leo puts it, quoting him. I consider particularly insidious the ideology that suggests every person must earn or justify his or her own worth, to the point of attributing greater value to those who are more efficient or effective. From this perspective, persons end up being reduced to a means of achieving results, a resource to be used and exploited, and are no longer recognized as a proper end in themselves, who should never be instrumentalized. Right? So insight number 1, the quest for greater efficiency can never obscure the dignity of every single human being. Insight number 2, our quest to overcome all limitations and achieve full individual autonomy is a perversion of what it means to be human. Again, in Pope Leo's words, quote, our relationship with life seems to be in crisis today. Everything that appears as a limit, incapacity, illness, old age, suffering, vulnerability, tends to be seen primarily as a defect to be corrected rather than as a reality through which our humanity matures and opens itself to relationship. We must remember that humanity flourishes not despite limitations, but often through them. Right? So second insight, our quest to overcome all limitations and achieve full individual autonomy is a perversion of what it means to be human. Insight number 3, while it is good to alleviate suffering, we must also recognize that limitations are inescapably linked to dignity. And again, to quote the Pope, finitude, when truly accepted, does not diminish us, but opens us to recognizing the face of God and others. Indeed, precisely because we experience limits, vulnerability, suffering, failure, we can recognize the inviolable dignity of every person, both our own and that of others. Through this experience of our limitations, we remain capable of intuiting a fraternity greater than ourselves and of perceiving injustice as a scandal. So insight number 3, while it's good to alleviate suffering, we must also recognize that limitations are inescapably linked to dignity. And then the final insight number 4, digital connection is no substitute for human closeness, care, and compassion. Again, to quote the Pope, the digital culture multiplies connections and offers new opportunities for interaction, but the human heart retains an irrevocable need for genuine closeness. I invite everyone to cherish places and times where physical presence remains crucial, such as shared meals, Christian community gatherings, time spent with the lonely and serving the poor. These are the signs of a humanity that continues to believe that every person's body is a dwelling place of God and a temple of the Holy Spirit. It is precisely this covenant between glory and fragility that becomes the criterion for evaluating the anthropological models offered by contemporary culture. Let me say that last sentence one more time. It is really important. It is precisely this covenant between glory and fragility that becomes the criterion for evaluating the anthropological models offered by our contemporary culture. Right? So the final insight, digital connection is no substitute for human closeness, care, and compassion. This is all from one document published in the past month that doesn't even pertain explicitly to disability. It's about AI. It's just an example. As you know better than I do, theology can break open so many of the rigid, closed-off assumptions that permeate our understanding of disability. I am so grateful to you for investing your time your energy, your expertise, and your care in these conversations. We are deeply honored to host you. Welcome to St. Thomas.
All right. Apologies. Our first panel speakers, feel free to make your way up to the stage. I'm the moderator. I will be there in a second with you. But of course, we're a disability conference, so take your time and do it on disability time. See you in a second.
It on, and then leave that there if you want to like support with on and off. Sure. Okay. Sweet.
Hey, AJ, I think these mics might need to be turned on. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Check one, check two. Perfect. Okay, hello everybody. We're really pleased to have this fantastic panel as your first opening plenary panel. My name is Ben Bond. I am a white person with glasses, receding hairline, fairly masculine presenting, use he, they pronouns, and I got a big beard and a red shirt. We're really fortunate to have some incredible panelists here today. I will be moderating with you all. And yeah, the kind of the structure of this panel, we will give the folks a chance to talk about their respective faith traditions. I'll go through a little brief bio of each person. We've got some folks also on screen who are panelists as well. So very excited for this. And yeah, so this panel is our first of a series of two panels that are focused on disability and from interfaith perspective. And yeah, let's get into it. So we've got some incredible panelists here. We've got myself. I'll do my own bio read. But I am an associate of advocacy at Disability Belongs, which is a nonprofit, national disability nonprofit. I'm ordained in the Disciples of Christ tradition, and I'm a multiply disabled person with lived experience, both growing up with a disability and acquiring one later in life. I did my master's of divinity at Yale Divinity School. And yeah, I also have dyslexia. So if at any point I misread something, that's we're just, it's cool. Let me know and we'll roll with it. So, Yeah, and next to me, I have Sarah. And Sarah is a descendant of the Lower Sioux Indian community where her mother and relatives still live. Does that sound better? Or is that too loud? Better? Okay, thank you. Um, Sarah has two children, works in high school and daycare with elders at a local nonprofit, and is certified as a family peer specialist and caregiver consultant. Sarah is the co-chair and Special Education Advisory Council and serves on the American Indian Family Committee of for her children's school district. Through her lived experience as an American Indian Dakota with disabilities raising two American Indian and Latino children, she offers 10 plus years of experience in strengthening relationships between schools, family, and communities through her passion for special education, youth mental health at the district, county, and state level. Very excited to have Sarah here. And then next to Sarah, we have Meg. Meg is a presidential scholar and PhD student in the historical and cultural studies of religion at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. I'm also going to follow my own values. When we're up here, we may speak a little slower so that our manual captioner has time to actually caption everything. And I realized I was speaking a little fast, so I'll make sure to do that so we have ample time for our captioners and our wonderful ASL interpreters. Um, Meg is focuses their work on religion and literature and environmental theology and human ethics, specifically looking at what the poet Walt Whitman's pantheism, its radically inclusive dream for democracy, and the ways the unnatural bodies of people of color, queer people, and disabled people shape the body politic. They are recipient of the 2024-2025 GTU Newhall Fellowship, which funds their position as a graduate instructor for the fall of 2025 semester. He previously published on the values and ethics of pantheism in theology and science, and have an essay edited in the volume of Marina Abramovich and Religion from Palgrave Macmillan forthcoming. And have presented at conference and topics including Julian of Norwich as a spiritual ancestor to disability theologians. Thank you so much, Meg. And we've got Pastor Lauren Cannata, who is also there to the right of Meg, is a disability and mental health justice minister. She lives with chronic illness, mental health issues, and is disabled by attitudes and societal structures. Amen. She speaks to the truth to power, and writes prophetic poems. She quotes the Bible almost as much as she quotes the Lord of the Rings, and loves both people and animals. We love Pastor Laura. And last and definitely not least is our illustrious guest on screen with us today, Joohi Tahir. Joohi is a graduate from Boston University with a degree in business management, having spent over 20 years excelling in the corporate world, speaking globally about marketing strategies all over the world. Joohi has turned her talents to become a national advocate for Muslims with disabilities. This led to her involvement in co-founding and the appointment of as executive director of Muhsin, a revolutionary nonprofit co-founded by leading U.S. Imam Sheikh Omar Suleiman. In consultation with Sheikh Omar, Joohi laid out planned and built the organizational programs and services which we now know as Muhsin. Recognizing a gap in the community that left many families isolated and her own family being affected by disability, Joohi has been outspoken for the past 18 years, specifically about the need for inclusion of her daughter who is on the autism spectrum. She started with small community initiatives, talks, support groups, consulting with mosque administrators and mainstream scholars about the needs of community to be more aware and made more accessible for people with disabilities. And she is currently the CEO of Muhsin. And it's just a really incredible organization. So that is our introductions. So grateful to have these wonderful panelists with us. And we're going to give them a chance to just give like a 3-minute visual description of themselves, as well as kind of a short overview of your tradition and its relation to disability and theology. I just want to reiterate that nobody is a sole representative of their tradition, and every tradition is multifaceted, as all of us who are part of traditions know, and it cannot be captured in a 3-minute spiel. However, we're going to give it a chance to do it anyway. So I'm going to pass it to Sarah if you're up for it. And feel free to bring the mics pretty close. It sounds like that's what we need for good sound.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Vinueza. I'm the first descendant of the Lower Sioux Dakota community here in Minnesota. I am Dakota and white. I have shoulder length hair. I'm wearing a blue shirt, black jacket, and a traditional ribbon skirt that my daughter and I made with Indian education, along with some jewelry made by community members. I grew up coming from my Dakota roots. We believe that we come from the Creator, and we believe that humans, animals, and plants are all the same. We believe everything and everyone is made with a purpose. We see disabilities as gifts that and inclusion. Everyone in the community is connected. Everybody's part of it, especially children. Sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm going to pass it to Meg.
Thank you, Ben. My name is Meg Mercury. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am a white person with light brown hair that is pulled back. I'm wearing a sleeveless white top and tan pants and green earrings. And I'm smiling a lot today because I'm really excited to be here. I practice a kind of non-specified nature-based spirituality that's rooted in pantheistic theology. But I grew up in a very conservative evangelical Christian tradition, which I left in part because of its non-inclusive attitude toward disabled people. It's a very oppressive attitude toward disabled people. And the relationship between nature-based spiritualities and disabilities is complex, and I think I'll get into that later with our questions because it's very multifaceted. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Laura, go for it.
Hi, my name is Laura. I use she, her pronouns. I am a short person with violet hair. Glasses. I use a power wheelchair. I'm wearing a multicolored blouse. And yeah, I grew up Lutheran, but I'm now UCC church person. And grew up in the Christian tradition, not strictly evangelical, not just middle of the road, I guess. And as far as disability, it's been a journey. I started out thinking it was, the healing stories and it's to be cured and it was a good thing. And now I'm like, sometimes not. And just I think that every Christian denomination is different. So when I grew up in, like I said, it had like a progressive kind of arc. So it's evolving each day on its opinions and theological things for disabled people. But I really believe in the Imago Dei and that we're all created as part of God's image.
Thank you, Laura. And of course, Joohi.
Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me, including the interpreter for the whole audience?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, salam and peace. It's wonderful to be here. As you heard, first of all, about myself, I'm joining you all virtually from Chicago from my home office. I'm a South Asian female with a Middle Eastern descent. I am wearing a forest green headscarf known as the hijab, and I'm very happy to be joining this discussion today. I am representing the religion of Islam. I am a practicing Muslim, and the topic of disability has a lot of roots as well in my religion, and I'm so excited to share with all of you today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Joohi. Well, our first question is very rich. We're very excited to dive into this. It is, what is one value, text, or teaching from the tradition that you are speaking from that informs its beliefs about disability? Does anybody feel excited to take that on first?
I can go.
Go for it, Laura.
So the story I was going to tell today is it's about my tradition, but it's about me personally and the view of God's love for everyone. And when I was a little girl in the church basement singing, different hymns and whatever the Sunday school songs were, the one song that I really, really liked, and I'm gonna do this, was the Zacchaeus song. And the Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. And that to me explained so much because I didn't know like the story, the Bible verse about stature and status and tax collectors, but I was a wee little girl and I, had to like sit on people's shoulders to see things. And I was like, oh my goodness, Zacchaeus is a dwarf. He has dwarfism. So I was doing exegesis at 4 years old, just didn't know that's what I was doing. And I was so excited. And the part of the story where Jesus goes to Zacchaeus' house and loves on him and accepts him just the way he is, I was like, well, maybe Jesus will come to my house and love on me and accept me just the way it was. And that has been my journey ever since. And so that's kind of my big thing is that God loves you just who you are. And it was really a solid, like I had a lot of questions about whether society liked me and whether I was welcome there, but I always knew I was welcome with God.
Thank you, Laura. It's really beautiful. Meg, Joohi, Sarah, who would you? Meg, you're nodding your head. Yeah, for it. Go for it.
So I kind of mentioned that I practice nature-based spirituality, and I think that implies very strongly the truth that this is not like a formalized tradition, and it doesn't really have authoritative sources. But in the US, probably the most famous nature writer is Henry David Thoreau. And he wrote, "In society, you will not find health, but in nature." And elsewhere, he wrote, "Nature is but another name for health." He wrote these lines while he was suffering terribly from the debilitating case of tuberculosis that eventually killed him. So when he comments on the health that he experienced in nature, which certainly was not curative for him, versus his experience of society as diseased, contrary to the popular caricatures of Thoreau as a guy who was like an antisocial hermit, what I see in his commentary resembles more what I hear in contemporary disability scholars who point out that disabled people do not need accommodations so much as we live within a society that is both disabling and willfully and illogically unaccommodating. For Thoreau, nature becomes a kind of great equalizer in which he and the plants and the clouds, the animals, the trees, the water, the insects, and the air all live on a kind of equal footing that gives him both greater mental health as well as some relief from his physical illness, experiences he does not encounter in the confining structures of town society and the closed, smoky air of its indoor chambers.
That's really beautiful. Thank you, Meg. Joohi, we'll give you a chance to invite you to share.
Sure. So just for a little background on tradition and its, relation. Ben, do you want me to jump into that first before the text? Can we do that? Just for overview. So the topic of disability has roots and references, many references in the religion of Islam, tracing back hundreds and hundreds of years ago. The major focus is our holy book, which is known as the Quran, and it's on teaching people about the oneness of God, sharing stories of different prophets, their relationships with the communities, challenges that they're faced, and overall the struggle for social justice. The prophets and the messengers in the Quran are depicted as role models, and they're also representations of people with disabilities in the Quran. Earlier, as my co-panelist was sharing in her tradition, these portrayals can be interpreted to really challenge the disability stigma that we have within communities today. Often these individuals were highly revered. They were empowered in the tradition of Islam. And there are many passages, I mean, I can't cover all of them, but they continue to challenge the stigma and the abuse and the harassment of marginalized communities. And the Quran declares that people have worth and must be treated fairly with respect and included in all walks of life, including faith. So the text, as Ben asked, one of them, a direct text from the Quran that resonates with me, God, referred to as Allah, asserts, "O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the noblest of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted." From chapter 49, verse 13. God urged believers, "Do not let some men ridicule others. They may be better than them. Nor let some women ridicule other women. They may be better than them. Do not defame one another, nor call each other by offensive nicknames. How evil it is to act rebelliously after having faith. And whoever does not repent, it is they who are the true wrongdoers," from chapter 49, verse 11. What's being stated in these verses in a nutshell is defining the true value of a person in the eyes of God. This speaks to physical appearance as well as physical abilities. They are being defined only on their goodness and piety and righteousness. I'm going to say that again. They are being defined by God only on their goodness and piety and righteousness. So, exploring the works of several Muslim theologians and philosophers, we can conclude that Muslim jurists were supportive of people with disabilities. They avoided ableism. Some examples are when they encouraged people, for example, with physical disabilities, to offer prayers in the seated position or make accommodations. But we can get into all of that later. But God created everyone as equal, with disability as a non-determinant of their personal identity. So that's what I wanted to share.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Joohi. Sarah, go for it.
I think that we believe that the Creator and Mother Earth, a tradition we have, is everything comes from them. As I mentioned before, we believe that animals, plants, people, we're all the same. And we don't believe we practice a way of wellness versus illness or disability. And as I shared, everybody's a gift. Everybody has a purpose. Sorry, I forgot my notes I had. We practice with our sacred medicine that comes from the land, sweetgrass, tobacco, sage, and cedar. And we try to do many more things natural. Into the 1970s, it was against the law to practice our religion. And so I came from generations of family that would practice in the woods. We believe we're all on a journey. We couldn't practice our traditional ceremonies, and much of our healing comes from our ceremonies and prayers. So now our children, this next generation, are learning many more of our traditional ways. We believe in 7 generations, which starts with you and goes to your great-grandchildren and then to your great-grandfather. And we were just, yesterday, this weekend was my Pawa Wasapi, our traditional time to be together. And we have 7 generations with my cousin's grandchild since the Dakota War in the 1860s. And there's a lot of importance to that because you feel all the trauma and you have all the learning, good and bad, passed through all the generations.
I appreciate that. I also have spoken to some Indigenous friends who talk about the 3 sisters, the beans, the squash, and the third one is escaping me. It always does. But the corn, thank you. Yeah. And the importance of interdependence as part of that, like many Indigenous value systems that I think in disability context is really important and valuable as well. So thank you. I appreciate that. Our second question is a question that is relevant to all of us in the disability community and those who support us. What are the obstacles and challenges that disabled people face in the practice of our respective traditions? So I would love to invite Joohi to go first if you're up for it.
Sure, absolutely. So definitely there are internal challenges with stigma first. I can't speak from the perspective of someone who lives with a defined disability. However, I've been a strong advocate for my daughter, who is a nonverbal young adult, non-vocal young adult living with autism. Um, there are obviously environmental obstacles, communication obstacles, but there are obstacles having to do with inaccessibility, attitude, and lack of resources. And I think we see this across faiths. To add to that, transportation, representation, economic obstacles. And as an example, so Muslims, I've come across in my work a lot of Muslims who are blind, and they had no resources before Braille Qurans were even a thing. And if you think about it, a lot of us use scripture and our holy books to learn, and we read and we're taught, even some of us at a young age with Sunday school and whatnot. But this whole community of blind Muslims, that was a huge obstacle for them. They said, well, we don't want to listen always. We want to have something to have and to hold and to read, just like everybody else. And so having the Braille Qurans was huge, and it only came about very recently. So that was an obstacle. Deaf Muslims now rely on services that my organization provides throughout North America to have at Friday sermons ASL interpreters. And it's been a very small effort that makes a huge impact to remove that obstacle. And, you know, having that service available on a regular basis keeps someone connected and provides that connectivity. Although awareness is growing and increasing, our communities are still not proactively all working to include our folks living with disabilities in places of worship. That's where the lion's share of my work is to educate people and train them on how to do that exactly. But some of this needs to be built in, and it shouldn't be something that our community of people with disabilities have to really constantly be asking for and begging for, and that's been the case. In terms of, you know, the members of the community bring such intelligence and value, and if they're included, you know, they're able to participate. At Mosin, we work in about 130 cities across North America, and if a community learns and trains with us and they, you know, follow through our program and become certified, then these are some solutions that are long lasting, that can sit with the community and remove some of those obstacles. If they are physical barriers, obviously physical, but a lot of it is attitudinal in our communities. And the more there is conversation and discussion about this, I believe the obstacles we are starting to see the obstacles be removed. We even have a dedicated specialized curriculum built by special education professionals for children to learn Islam in a Sunday school setting. It's an exclusive curriculum with models, very hands-on, with things that they would be able to learn with that never existed before. And now those children are included in 30 programs across the country also. So that's what I'm going to say about removing obstacles for now.
Thank you, Joohi. And I do want to uplift the incredible work you all do for pilgrimages as well at Muslim, ensuring that like there is accessible pilgrimage opportunities for disabled Muslims. I've always appreciated seeing that on social media and different blogs. So yeah, and I also realize I don't want to like call on y'all and be like anxious, so I'll just give you an order. Let's do Meg, Sarah, and then Laura, if that works for you all. Sweet.
Okay, so in nature-based spiritualities, access to outdoor spaces is usually considered a core component. So there are a lot of obstacles and challenges that disabled people face in these practices, but I'm just going to name, I think, 3 things here. Sure, yeah, thank you. So first, spending time in outdoor spaces is like I just said, often a valued part of nature-based spiritualities, but access to outdoor space is notoriously limited for many people with disabilities for a number of reasons. Everything from inaccessible terrains to nature-based programming like camps, workshops, tours, guided experiences, and learning centers not prioritizing accessibility on any level. This lack of access can create a profound sense of alienation for disabled people who feel a spiritual connection to nature. Second, many of us are familiar with the weaponization of the terms natural and unnatural in discourse around our disabilities, our bodies, our minds, the way we treat our conditions or seek equitable access in this world. This language is important because, in my experience, this can leave a very sour taste around this, in my opinion, false dichotomy between what is natural and unnatural. In my perspective and in my spirituality, everything in existence is nature, including us. And so there's no way for us to be unnatural. It is difficult for disabled people to hear that our body minds and what makes our lives livable are unnatural our whole lives, and then to hear that the natural world is a place of spiritual solace and renewal. This creates a profound disconnect, one that we can only begin to repair if we work consciously to reject the lie that we are unnatural and that anyone else has the right to decide what qualifies as natural or unnatural. We are nature, to reiterate. Third, and finally, nature-based spiritualities and the related environmental justice movements are too often oblivious, at best, to their centering of the experiences of white able-bodied people especially, and willfully ignorant of their practices of cultural appropriation from nature-based spiritual practices from Indigenous people both here in North America and abroad. In tandem, protected outdoor spaces have been notoriously limited to people of color in the United States. The most polluted neighborhoods are historically neighborhoods subjected to redlining and segregation. Native Americans have been forcibly removed from their ancestral homelands to often barren, inhospitable treaty land, on which subsequently the US government has repeatedly violated these treaties. People of color who live with the intersectional experience of disability have to do so under the reality that white supremacy has intentionally stolen from them their access to ancestral nature-based spiritual practices, as Sarah was illuminating for us just a moment ago, access to their ancestral lands, and has subjected their bodies and minds to environmental factors and generationally traumatic experiences that are further disabling in every conceivable way. In other words, when I speak about nature spirituality, I cannot do so in a woo-woo, warm and fuzzy, come sit by the campfire kind of way, because as a white person, to not acknowledge the immense harm many nature spirituality movements have done in the name of feeling good or seeking some form of authenticity is to be complicit in that harm. If I find my most profound spiritual experiences in nature, and I do, then I feel responsible for protecting nature. But to be conscious about the environmental crisis is to be conscious about the disabling impacts the environmental crisis has on millions of people at home and abroad, and the deeply racist and colonial origins and impacts of this crisis. Adding more ramps to public parks will not fix what is rotten at the heart of this multiply intersectional spiritual tragedy. Thank you.
Go for it, Sarah.
My train of thought.
Means you were listening. That's good.
Yeah. So one of the things, and also that Meg mentioned, was being put on reservations and taken away from your land. That affects where people can be connected with the Creator and where ceremonies took place. For instance, just here in Bedote was where our women went to give birth to children, and it was sacred, and then later became a concentration camp for our women, children, and elders. And so many spaces getting, and we were forced to be on reservations. I even looked with my mother's family, put in Shakopee, and then on Lower Sioux community, both sides of her family, they weren't connected. It wasn't easy to get to other places, but and of course our being against the law to practice traditional ways, in which nature is a huge part, being outside. There is no word for disability in a traditional Dakota language. We just believed everyone was even, everyone and everything Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I just really appreciate everybody's reflections. And it's beautiful to see how these are overlapping stories and experiences. And that's the beauty of these spaces and these panels, is we get to see where we have these shared histories, and where we can work together on these issues. So we really appreciate it. And I'm excited to invite Laura to share her thoughts as well.
I've been thinking a lot on this question, and from a Christian tradition, Christianity does a lot of things right, and it does a lot of things wrong. And there were so many things that I was like, what is an obstacle and what is this? And the one that I came up with is probably not the biggest one, but it's the one that I thought I could speak on. And that is, I'm from like I said, the UCC, which is a pretty progressive, kind of liberal, well, it's broad because it's congregational. So every church can kind of make its own decisions, but the church I go to is pretty progressive and stuff. Anyway, one of the things is all are welcome here. That's a big UCC theme, is all are welcome here. And that's great. And then they break that down by doing like open and affirming, which is LGBT plus welcoming stuff, anti-racism stuff, and then A to A, or accessible to all for disability, and WISE, which is the mental health thing. So there's all these different things about all are welcome. And it's a big phrase. And I think we are really good at talking about things in the UCC and in Christianity, but I think taking what we talk about and then putting it into practice is a harder step. And so one thing I notice is that we're really good at welcoming people in as congregants, like as members of the church. And this is, I think, in all of Christianity, and it's kind of a charity model, but we're not so good as putting disabled people in leadership roles. And I say that as having a leadership role, but it was very hard fought for. And I think people still have the idea that disabled people, we do for you, not what the disabled person has to offer, which I'm not saying I have everything to offer, but I've got some things. And one thing I really liked about the specific church that I belonged to, is when I got there, it was the first time that anyone said, well, what can you do for us? And I've been to a lot of different churches in my life, and it was the first time it was like, yes, I need help using the restroom, and I need help turning on lights and doing this and that. But they said, what are your gifts and what are your talents? And I don't see that in a lot of churches and a lot of denominations. And I think I think one of the things that we need to move on from is the charity model. There's other obstacles I can do too, but for time's sake, I'll just say that one.
Thank you. Absolutely. Well, this is the time we're going to invite for question and answer. And just kind of setting the scene, this is probably how we're going to do it for all of the plenary sessions this week. So we'll have a person running the mic to folks in the room, and we'll also have someone reading aloud the questions in the chat online. And we'll alternate between each in the room and online. One of the beautiful things about our conference is we are fully hybrid. And part of the values of accessibility and inclusion for us is ensuring that everybody online and everybody in person is truly integrated, and that there's not, separation or folks feeling that they're not part of this conference fully. And so that's one of the beautiful things that our conference, I think, does really well. And on that note, we will be having hybrid networking sessions during lunch. Greg will announce, or somebody will announce, the actual room. My dyslexia, I will not say the room correctly. But yeah, to have the opportunity for folks in person and online to connect, since we have such a robust online and in-person presence. And yeah, on that note, I think I've vamped a little bit enough. I think we're ready to go with questions. If we've got them in the chat, Angela will raise her hand to let me know. And if you all have questions in the room, please indicate either, if you are, if raising your hand is a way you would like to, if you need to vocalize however you want to, make sure just the person behind you who's wearing a mask, who is my partner, or no, sorry, Tammy in the blue shirt behind many of you will be holding the mic. So we'll bring it to everybody. On that note, are there any questions for our esteemed panelists? Looks like Angela's got her hand raised. So let's go online first.
All right, so we have Mary Ann who asks, can Meg address her work on Julian of Norwich and DBL?
Yeah, on Julian and what?
And DBL?
Disability liberation, something?
I'm sorry, I just mean disability. I always use that. DBL is disabilities. You work on disabilities.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm not familiar
Sorry.
with jargon. Sorry.
I think I made it up.
Yeah, sure. I gave a paper at the AAR Western Regional Conference a couple of years ago after one of my doctoral courses in medieval English theology or medieval English, what was it? Mystics, I think. And a lot of them were what it sounds. I mean, it was the kind of class it sounds like. It was a little bit of a snooze, but it wasn't my first time reading Julian, but I think it was my first time reading Julian's Revelations of Divine Love and seeing how much of that experience was shaped by her physical suffering and how she used that experience. And I mean used in a kind of deliberate way, because she was really writing against the authority of the church at the time. Women were not supposed to have the authoritative voice that she had. But because she viewed her near-death experience as an affliction that was given to her by God, that experience and the visions that she received from God kind of legitimated the authority of her voice through that. And she felt that her experience of suffering made her more understanding of the suffering of Jesus. And it gave her an authority to say a lot about the richness, depth, and breadth of God's love for humanity. And in fact, she promotes a kind of universal salvation that was extremely heretical at the time, but through a kind of sleight of hand of humility and also the authority of God gave this to me. You can't deny the authority of God's gift to me. I viewed her as kind of a forerunner of disability theology, in that there is a kind of gift in her suffering. She also claims at the beginning of Revelations of Divine Love that when she was much younger, she had asked God to give her this affliction and then promptly forgot about it. And then later, when she has this near-death experience, she's like, oh yeah, I did ask for this. So it's actually she's kind of funny. So if you haven't read her, she's the medieval mystic I would recommend diving into if you're curious about her.
Thank you so much. Also say, for those who don't know who Julian of Norwich is, she is a Christian mystic from the medieval era that was alive during the Black Plague and was a sequestered / cloistered nun. So a lot of her writings were done in isolation. And I agree, it was very influential in a lot of disability theology. To that point, our emerging scholar lecture will have some great coverage of mysticism. So we're excited about that later this week. So question in the room. Looks like we got someone to our left, my left here. Oh, Robert is right there. I'm sorry. Go for it, Robert.
I am here. So my apologies, I forget your name to the right of Meg, but I was touched by and found humor in your biblical interpretation of Zacchaeus. And I was wondering, other either Bible passages or experiences that you had maybe as a child or a younger person that have shaped who you are today. I'm just curious.
Yeah, that was definitely the big one. That was the one that kept me going. I loved the Bible stories as a kid. I was pretty, I don't know if devout is the right word as a child, but however devout as a child could be, I loved going to church and singing songs and learning things. I remember I did take things more literally back then because, you know, I was a child. And I remember one Christmas, we, they had like the display, the manger display. And I went up with my grandparents and I was very excited and very confused. And I came back and I told what I saw, which was, well, they had Mary and Josephus and baby Jesus was a light bulb because it was to represent the light of the world. So I just remember growing in my faith and going from this very literal transition, like Jesus is a light bulb, to, you know, the definition I have now. There are many Bible stories. I am one of the few disabled people I know that likes the healing stories. I don't necessarily think it's all about you have to be cured. There's a differentiation between cure and healing. But I really like the stories because, again, it's representation. It's not always good representation, but it's representation. Another one of my favorite stories is John 9, because I love the line when his parents are like, they like, is this really a blind man? Because he was healed and he could see. And his parents are like, well, ask him, he's of age, ask him yourself. And the phrasing, then they say something kind of anti-Semitic, and they added a line that was like, well, they said this because they were afraid of the Jews or the religious leaders or something. But what I took it is they were giving this adult man agency. You know, this is something my mother would say or my partner would say. You know, when people come up to them and go, how old is she? And they're like, why don't you ask her? She's an adult. Oh, but how old is she? Why don't you? It's just, sometimes I've heard this sentence on repeat. So yeah, those are just some of the stories that I like.
Thank you. Invitation for any virtual questions? Nothing now, so we can take one in the audience. We've got somebody lined up. Go for it.
Hello, my name is Jaewon from South Korea. My question is, how can the reconciliation between the nature and disability can be made? Here's my story. Like, as a disabled person, I've been heard whole of my life that you are kind of like the opposite person for against the nature because you use more straw, you need more power, you need more roles, which is like, so that's because you sometimes unwantedly disrupt the nature, right? So it really feels me so sad. So I want to embrace my body, disabled body, but also I want to connect the nature. So anyone can share your thought about this? Thank you.
I'll jump in, but I don't have to be the only one to respond to this. First of all, I think I said this earlier, you are nature. So I hope that you embrace yourself as part of that reconciliation. And I know that that can be a lifelong work. It is for me. And I think that there's a kind of myth that nature is like far off wilderness, unspoiled by human beings. And in order to connect to nature, we have to like get away from the things that humans have ruined, you know, by developing things or building things or making them accessible. And I don't believe that. I don't think that's real. So some of the ways that I connect with nature, and that I know some of my friends who deal with like chronic illness where things like pollen are really problematic for them in terms of even spending a lot of time outdoors, are like I grow plants inside. I garden a little bit and I'm just really careful about what I grow. I like to go to the park when that's possible for me, and I'm choosy about which parks I go to because some are better than others. It's a kind of trial and error experience for me. The other thing that I do is I read a lot. I mean, I think we mentioned I'm in a PhD program. I don't have a choice. Sometimes it feels like there's a gun to my head about how much reading I'm doing right now. But Robert's laughing because he's doing the same thing. But I find a lot of solace in the imagery of nature. So I read a lot of nature poetry. and memoirs of people who work with nature in some capacity. And then I have a pet, and she's nature too. And so I think sometimes connecting with other animals besides human beings can be a way to generate that connection and that reconciliation. But yeah, I find that the deepest part of my spirituality and connection with nature is the attention that I pay. Speaking of mystics, if you all are familiar with the 20th century French mystic Simone Weil, she has this beautiful idea that attention is the sincerest form of prayer. Yeah, I know. It kind of gives me chills when I think about that too. And so for me, it's not, I don't have to be a mountaineer. I don't have to be, a cold plunge swimmer. I don't have to be a kind of extreme sport nature engager. It's enough for me to sit in the grass every once in a while or observe out my window when I live here. So the weather is terrible, like half of the year. But it's enough for me to watch the birds outside my window and really observe them, like to be fully present in that moment. That's the type of attention that feels like prayer to me. Jump in on that.
If not, I do have a question.
We have a question.
Okay, I'm gonna actually take moderator privilege here real quick and ask a question. I have a question for Joohi. I've done a lot of study on a lot of the accommodations that are built into Islam, around, especially like legal jurisprudence, like legal scholars of Islam, and how prayer is also something that is you do to your ability, or do a lot of these different pillars to your ability. And I was wondering if you would be comfortable touching on that.
Yes, sure. And just to preface with a disclaimer, I am not a scholar of Islam, so I don't give these rulings. But from my learning and from what I've been able to read and learn about, Islam is about submission to God, and there's ease in that. There's ease in that. And I was starting to mention earlier, if you're in a position where you cannot, and I'll back up a little. The practice of Islam, one of the main tenets is prayer, and the actual physical prayer 5 times a day. And so some of you may have seen it. It involves bending down, prostrating down to the ground, as a lot of our traditions originally had prayer. And if one is unable to physically prostrate, you can partially prostrate. You can prostrate from, you can bow down from sitting in a seated position. If you cannot even do that, you can bow your head down. If you cannot even do that, you can gesture with your face or your eyes that you are submitting to God. So there are that many accommodations built into the religion that it's really meant for everyone. And so that's just one of them. There's an ablution that people perform before prayer, and we get a lot of these questions in my line of work. I have a skin condition. I cannot wash my hands that many times a day. That's okay. There's actually an accommodation for that, where you can, do the actual physical action, and that is a purification, but it's actually still accepted because it's ritualistic purification. If you cannot touch water, you cannot touch water that many times a day. So these are some of the things that are accommodated for. If we look at the tradition, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he didn't always walk in Mecca on the pilgrimage around the Kaaba, which is that black cube that everyone sees. It's a symbolism of God's house, so that people walk around to center God in your life. He didn't always walk. There were people who couldn't always walk. He was mounted on a camel many times. Today in Mecca, and this is again from having taken groups and groups of people, we've taken 10 trips over the last few years. We have now these golf carts that can go around. We have wheelchairs that have separate lanes that can go around. So the accommodations are built in, and the concepts are the same, but there is no less reward for people who have to take those types of accommodations. So hopefully I answered your question, Ben.
Beautifully. Thank you so much. All right. Do we have a question online, Angela? Nope. Okay, so we'll go to our next in-person question. Go for it, Tom.
Tom Jones. If you could snap your fingers and make the changes in your faith that would foster more inclusion and acceptance and belonging, what changes would you make? And I realize we're almost out of time, but if you could briefly tell me, what changes do you see need to be made in your faith for more acceptance of people with disabilities?
That's a great question. I think everybody might be able to answer that one.
I think many of our traditions and ways and ceremony were passed down orally in teaching our children, and a lot of, trying to connect with people. So I think snapping our fingers and making it more easy for people to understand and come back to the traditional ceremonies. So I believe that it heals you in many ways. So
I love that. And definitely, I think you've talked about throughout this, it's like having access to place and ancestral lands is a disability issue deeply.
I'll answer from my end. Oh, if I can.
Sarah's going to finish up real quick.
Just in a conversation we were having this morning about St. Anthony Falls, which is in Hennepin area, Minneapolis. A nonprofit worked for many years to get back some land. So we're going to make the waterfalls bigger and work on making the actual, they took this land and made mills there to make money, and it destroyed the river, destroyed the area. And so this will be a multi-year project with Dakota people, and we're building it back. But I think his land can come back and be more sacred and be honored in a way.
Awesome. Thank you. Go for it, Joohi.
Just, the snap your finger question. I think that there need to be more voices for these discussions. And I think people search for answers and to their challenges. And oftentimes in my own faith, people will go to the mosque or they'll go to the imam, the leadership of the mosque. And those voices aren't always trained and not very clear on some of these things. You really have to study, to understand how to make people feel welcome. And so I think having other voices, other organizations, other leadership, other people that are vocal, I would welcome more of that in all of our.
Thank you so much. Go for it, Meg or Laura.
I'm more concerned there's bugs all over the food.
We have someone unmuted online, it sounds like. We good?
I think for me, I think Christianity needs, especially American Christianity, or Christianity in America, needs to focus more on interdependence and less on independence, because that has such, I think I call it the myth of independence. Nobody is 100% independent. And that's sort of like the American ideal or the dream, and that gets tied into the Christianity. And it's just, so if we could get rid of that myth of independence and speak more about interdependence, that would be my finger snap.
Go for it, Meg, if you have anything.
I alluded to the wicked problem of racism is the environmental crisis, is an accessibility crisis. If I could snap my fingers and fix that, what a wonderful world it would be. That would be nice. In a more finger snappy, problem fixy kind of way, more accessible parks would be great.
Love that. And I think we've got time for one more question online that Angela has queued up for us.
All right, thank you all so much for all you've shared. We're going to wrap up with just this last question from Rachel, who says, I found Sarah's comment about how her disability, or how her people have no word for disability because all are equal, really striking. So Rachel asks, could you expand on that? And they're also curious if and how physicality is accommodated in Indigenous rituals, life, and religion.
I think we believe all things are created how they're supposed to be, whether that's in nature, humans, or with animals. And actually, we believe only the creator really makes anything perfect. So even in jewelry, things we make, many times we actually, something's not, something's made different. So that naturally, I feel we're just inclusive and there's many differences and making it work for everybody. How I just kind of grew up is everyone was connected, everyone was together. And on the other side of my family, it didn't always feel like that. There was when we'd come together in larger groups, even in my church, you're very separated, very segregated, and it's not that way in Dakota ways. The families are always together, the children are always with the families. And we have such a respect for our children at the beginning of our journey and our elders at the end that really most things are placed around them. So the elders that maybe can't walk as much anymore, and I've just gone through many things through age, it's making everything kind of work around them. So then naturally it works for everyone else.
That's a beautiful universal design right there. Well, I want to invite you all to sound or sign a round of applause for our wonderful panelists. They've been fabulous. Thank you. On that note, we will be having a break, and we will return, I believe, in 15 minutes. I'm not good at time, but I also want to say we hope to get a group photo after the second plenary. We'll do it facing or on that wall. Just be heads up if you are able to ambulate over there after our second plenary so we can get a great group shot. That would be fantastic. In the meantime, just a reminder, there is a sensory room you can attend for the break session. And please take care of your body minds as you need to. Thank you so much, and we'll be back very soon.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think.
Wow, so good. That's so great.
Hey, Kim. Oh, that's loud.
Hi, test, test.
Yeah, Kim, can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Great.
Yes,
Yay.
okay, we can see you too.
Yay. Okay,
Well,
fantastic.
thanks, Kim. We'll bring you back at like 5 minutes or so.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Awesome.
all. I don't know. I'm so sorry. But you could ask Ben, who's back there. Ben would know. Thanks. Hey, Justin. I think, why don't you? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you don't need a chair. Went out of my way to bring up another chair. Silly Allison. Tricks are for kids. Is this good?
Yes, you want me right here?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, let me do right here.
Right here or right there?
Let me do right here.
That's great.
As to avoid directly running over your toes.
Yeah. I like that your shoes like perfectly match St. Thomas colors.
I'd love to say I did that on purpose.
No, you did.
Good.
I already know that you did. You bought them specifically for this conference with your honorarium.
I did kind of have a moment where I went purple, purple. Yes.
All right, I'm gonna have Kim up just so that I can see her. Kim up here. Okay. Rebecca? I can see Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca.
Oh, yes. Is somebody speaking to me? Hello?
I can't see anything. What's going on?
Was somebody speaking to me? This is Rebecca. I thought somebody said my name.
I think there's a Rebecca in the room as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I apologize. I just I'm on the conference committee, so I thought somebody was speaking to me.
Yeah, I think that it was for they were addressing the panelist Rebecca Sumner, probably,
Oh.
potentially.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're so good.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there another one of these pin? Or I can see if Rebecca or someone could wear that. I hate those. I hate wearing. I don't like to- Yes. Why did I do that? Why don't I do that? I'll bring this mic here.
If I need to, I can wear that. Yeah, that's fine. Ah, yes. I felt very loud right now. Yeah, I should say, hi, Grab. It's good to see you. All right.
Oh, yes. I love your giraffe.
Hello. Good. How are you? Yes. Good to see you. Yes, there's a reason I brought this. Yes. His name is July.
Yeah, this stuff. I've got some intense. For Elijah.
Yes.
It's good work, but. Test. Lots of emotions. And then I went straight to the end. Test. So like, Ben, am I good to invite folks back? Then I will invite folks back. I invite you to take your place. Invite you to get a cup of water, a cup of coffee, multiple cups of coffee, whatever it is that you need at this time. As we move into our next panel, I'll give folks a minute to move our bodies to the spaces we want them to be. Kim, you want to do another little mic check? Can we hear you, Kim?
Check, check. Can you hear me?
Check. We can hear
Woo!
you.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks so much, folks. We are entering our next panel time. This panel is about caregiving, care receiving, and disability, and we're going to explore all three of those. My name is Allison Connolly-Vetter. I'll be moderating this panel today. It is a total joy to have that role. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a minute, which is when you'll also meet our incredible panelists. But I want to give you a little bit of an overview to what we're going to be able to do, what we're going to do in this panel today, how we're going to spend our time. So in this panel, we're going to talk about all sorts of caregiving and care receiving. We'll talk about parenting, partnership, family, grief, joy, storytelling, memory keeping, and so much more. And I want you to know that we are not trying to tell a single, neat, tidy, or universal story about disability and care and caregiving. That story, I don't think does exist. And if it did, it would be tremendously boring. And we are not interested in that. We are going to tell multiple true stories about disability that exist simultaneously, in parallel, and in intersection. We're going to be here in this space for about 75 minutes. We're going to chat for a while. You'll have time to ask us questions. I want you to know that we have agreed as a team that I will hold the time anxiety for this group. So that means that if you hear me ask some of these folks to take space or make space, we have agreed to that practice together, and that we know that it's done with all sorts of respect and appreciation. In this panel, we are going to define disability in a big tent sort of way, which is my favorite way to do it, and I think the most honest. So when we talk about disability, we're talking about those that are sensory, that impact our mobility. We're talking about neurodivergence and madness and mental health, chronic illness, chronic pain, anyone who connects with the label of disability, that's who we're talking about in this panel. For your access notes, I invite you to do whatever it is your body needs to do in this space. If you need to get another cup of water, another cup of coffee, an additional cup of coffee, a third cup of coffee, you're so welcome to do that. Use the restroom. I've been asked to let you know that a clarification that the gender neutral restroom is actually on the first floor. So if you need a gender neutral restroom, it is on the first floor.
Good to know.
It is good to know. It's so good to know. And with that, we're going to move into some intros. Meet these incredibly cool cats up here and on our screen. So I will start by introducing myself. My name is Allison Connolly-Vetter. I use she and her pronouns. My home base geographically is right here in, well, it's not right here. It's very far away, actually, across the river in Minneapolis. The furthest trip that I take. Image description wise, I'm a white woman. I have short, curly, blondish, brownish hair. I'm wearing a gray sweater and a blue dress. And we're going to introduce ourselves this morning with the idea of differences that make a difference. What is it about us that you should know as we orient to our time together? So for me, those follow lines of gender and sexuality, race and culture. So I'm a white woman, I'm cisgender. I live here in Minneapolis. I grew up in the Appalachian South. I am disabled. I identify as MAD. I am partnered. I have a tiny baby who will be here tomorrow, which is a big part of my life right now. And for panel introductions, we're just going to go boop, boop, boop straight down the line with Kim last. I'm going to ask you panelists to introduce yourself in the same way, and I can prompt you on any of these. So name and pronouns, where you are as your home base geographically, an image description of yourself, and then the differences that make a difference that you want folks to know about this morning. So Justin, can you kick us off?
Yes, my name is Reverend Justin Hancock. I am from Dallas, Texas. My pronouns are he, him, his, etc. I am representing the organization on my t-shirt, which is the Julian Way, and my t-shirt is gray. I am a white male wearing glasses with a slightly more advanced receding hairline than I will admit out loud, so that's the last time we'll talk about that. And I'm here with my wife Lisa, and differences that make a difference. I am a parent of a for now able-bodied 7-year-old, and I will introduce we have a tradition in my family of my son gives us stuffies where we travel, which we take pictures of. So this is my draft July, which if you are in the selfie market, please selfie with July. You will thrill my child Angus to no end. So I come as a person embodied by cerebral palsy and a parent, and bring both of those embodiments to this panel, which I'll get into later, I'm sure. So I'll invite our other panelists to introduce themselves now. Did I miss anything? All right.
Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. My name is Molly Montana, and I go she, her pronouns. I am located over in Bloomington, Minnesota. Image description, I am a Native American female, long brown hair, black jacket, black shirt. And then differences that make a difference. So I'm female, straight. I am Native American, so I'm Mini Koju Lakota, enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe over in South Dakota. That's my mother's side. And on my father's side, we are Hunkpapa Lakota, and that's Standing Rock. And then I have 4 children. Oldest is 16, and then a 13-year-old son, 5-year-old daughter, and then a 7-month-old. And I live mostly in South Dakota in the Black Hills. And I'm very traditional when it comes to my culture. So.
Is it on? It's already on. Sorry. My name's Rebecca, Reverend Rebecca Sumner. My pronouns are she, her. I live north of Seattle in a place that we call Everett, but historically is a Coast Salish fishing estuary called Hibulb. I am a Caucasian woman with short-ish brown hair, bangs that really need a trim, so you may not be able to see my eyes. A marigold yellow dress and scarf, that's the word, and a black sweater on. My differences that make a difference: I am a Caucasian cis het woman without any known disabilities, no neurodivergence, but my neurodivergent friends say I should have that checked. The biggest difference for me is that I am a lost mom, which means for me, my oldest child died, and I will be talking about that. And I also have a 7-year-old who is at home, and that also impacts how I show up because I miss that 7-year-old, and she didn't send me a stuffy. It's okay.
Oh.
Hi, folks. I am Reverend Kim Sholin, and my pronouns are she, her. I am my home base geographic location in the historically Yokuts land known as Fresno, California. I am a pastor at Grace Community Church, which is, if you're heading up to Yosemite, we are like a little turn down the road and 20 minutes down the road. So it's a pretty fantastic place to be. My image description: I am a white woman of a certain age. There are crow's feet. I'm hoping the screen's not too big and you can't see them too clearly, but we'll see how that goes. Blonde curly hair and black rimmed glasses, wearing a light blue shirt that says Phillies on it because, for better or for worse, gotta rep my Phillies. And the differences about me that make a difference. I have ADHD and probably autism, have not been evaluated for that, but oh boy, do I identify with an awful lot of the qualities where ADHD and autism overlap. And I am biromantic and asexual. I am a mom of 3. We have a very neurodivergent house. It's kind of like the Pokemon of neurodivergencies. Gotta catch them all. We've got an array of them. And so things get kind of fun around here. I am working on my Doctor of Ministry, and the focus is on pastoral care and at the intersection of disability and death. And I am grieving my partner, who was a beautiful disabled man named Paul Fogel, who passed a few years ago. And so I bring that into this space, as well as being in a relationship now with another ADHDer. And so that also all plays into how I show up and how disability is in my life. So thank you.
Thanks, folks. As you can see, an amazing panelist of generally cool humans. Our next question is, again, we're just setting the stage for the conversation we're going to have. And so I'll loop back to you, Kim, because you touched on this, and we'll just loop back in the reverse order. And this question is, if you can just set the stage for us about your relationships with caregiving, care receiving, and disability. So focusing on those identities, experiences, and relationships that you'll be diving more into on this panel. So this could be parenting, it could be family, it could be romantic relationships, other family relationships, and likely multiple, because we are complex and multifaceted human beings. So Kim, what should we know about your relationships with caregiving, care receiving, and disability?
So with caregiving and disability, as a parent who is neurodivergent, parenting neurodivergent kids, one of the things that the way that shows up in my life is definitely the parenting advice doesn't always work out in our household. I have joked that when my kids have a friend over that is neurotypical, they probably feel like the only human in a Muppet movie, because we have just such a neurodivergent household. And so it doesn't operate the same way as a lot of my friends' households. And that shows up, allowing that to be okay is a huge part of caregiving. And part of that is also, I don't know, can we receive care from ourselves, care receiving from myself to have grace around how our household runs and that it looks very different.
Yeah, 100%, Kim.
Yeah. And I co-parent, so I have our household extends out to my children's other families that their dads are at. And so the co-parenting situation extends out with that. And so there's different levels of comfort with talking about neurodiversity, and especially neurodiversity as disability, and co-parenting along those lines of making sure that we all have the support that we need. And sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder to have those conversations. But we could not do all of this without all of us fully on board for it. So it is I hate to say it. It is such a thing to say, but it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes, it takes our multiple families all working together to raise our kids and make sure that they are happy, supported, healthy, and loved. And as far as care receiving goes, the friendships and relationships that I am, the care that I receive as a person with ADHD from the people that love me, first of all, was a difficult thing to accept, because I struggle with asking for help, but I'm able to, I receive care in the ways that my partner shows up by saying, I also have diabetes, and by sending me a text every morning saying, your insulin's on your left side, your insulin's on your right side. Like that's how, and so that's the little bits of care receiving that I wouldn't have known to ask for, but the way that I'm able to receive care, that helps and honors my whole ADHD self. So
thanks, Kim. How about you,
Thank you.
Rebecca?
So I'm going to begin with my biggest insecurity being on this stage. Just put it in the room for y'all. Last year at IDT, somebody who was a disability parent spoke about how parents with disability are often problematic and center ourselves. And so when Greg asked me to be on this panel, I at first was like, oh no, I don't think so. Because I don't want to fill up space that belongs to other people. But when I heard that last year, I also had to turn off my screen. I was at home and I wept because my kiddo with disability died. So if I don't speak about and for her, she's gone. So I am here. My biggest connection to disability, there are others, but I won't fill the room with all of them, is being her mom. I would love if we could put up the picture. I want to try to represent her while I'm up here as much as possible. So this is Liv. Image description. It is the cutest kid in the history of kids. No offense to my surviving child. It is I believe in that picture, 4-year-old sitting in a wheelchair that has some pink on it. She is wearing a blue shawl and a red shirt, a colorful skirt, and some marigold yellow pants, and smiling like you can't even imagine it, with bangs that are also too long and need a trim. It's a family trait. So this is Liv. She was, and I don't mean this to be, inspiration porn. She was the most amazing child. And no offense to all of you who have children. It just by an accident of fate, I had the most amazing child. It just happened. She was playful, curious, wise. She had this thing even before she acquired disability where she could look at somebody, and multiple people told me it feels like I am known and loved from just this small child, the way she would look at you. I want to, before I talk about her disability, I want to talk about her strengths. She's not my sad story. There's grief, but she is my best story. And you all have full permission to ask me about her. If I start crying, we can either deal with it or in the conversation, but she's my best story. She acquired progressive disabilities from a neuro condition. And eventually died from that condition. So my relationship to disability caregiving was primarily taking care of her. And I would say that it continues. I feel like, and I'll get to it more in a minute, like now my caregiving is storytelling and legacy keeping. I messed with Christian scriptures a little bit here. I said that I am determined that neither death nor life can separate me from her, her from my love, but more essentially can separate her from participating in the bettering of the world. And so that's the caregiving that I'm doing right now.
Hello. So my relationship with caregiving, so my oldest daughter, who again is 16, she is autistic, has ADHD, developmentally delayed. They say floppy muscle tone, they used to say. But we started this journey. She was a normal baby until she was probably about 11 months old. And that's when she started having breathing problems. And over the course of 4 months, we were hospitalized 3 different times for a couple weeks every time for pneumonia. And then that's when they found out that she was aspirating liquids. And so we went through at least a year and a half of thickened feedings to honey consistency. She wasn't able to drink water or anything. And then eventually she grew out of it. But since then, we have gone through physical therapy, speech therapy, and any kind of therapy you can think of. I've had her in early education services since she was about 2.5 years old when they were able to take her. She's doing remarkably well. But throughout that whole experience, I had to rely a lot on my faith, because there were times where I wasn't able to trust the medical system, or the medical system failed us. So yeah, so that's, and I'll go into that later, but yeah, thank you.
So this question is really shifted and complexified for me, even as I was thinking about it in the airport yesterday. So I'm going to do my best. My relationship to disability is I have cerebral palsy, as some of you have that experience. and I've had it since practically birth. So this is the only embodiment I've ever known. I grew up in a household that was very loving and very encouraging and always allowed me to experience my difference. But in a largely able-bodied world until about 15 or 16 years ago when my twin brother was diagnosed with MS. I'm not going to share his story because he has a different relationship and some disability hesitancy there, and it's not my story to share. My mom was a principal and a special ed educator in the mid 80s and early 90s. And what has complexified for me is we have apparently right now, at least as of yet, a largely neurotypical 7-year-old who really, 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 really loves the schedule. I mean, really loves the schedule. And we do that for him because it makes him safer. It gives him knowledge of what's going to come up through the day. And we were talking to my mom about how much that's working over the last few days. And she goes, well, as he gets ready to go back to second grade, you're going to step away from that. You're going to need to step away from that because that's what we used to do. And that's what we do for kids with autism. She grew up and came up in a special ed world where autism was something to be feared. And what she doesn't know is that we're at the very least okay with autism, and we're like, okay, if that's our experience, great, bring it on. And on certain days, we're maybe rooting for autism, but that's a whole other discussion. So, and I take my child to school every day. We live 2 minutes from his school, so he rides on the side of my wheelchair to and from school. It's very important to me that other dads and moms see me being mom and dad. And I run a disability empowerment nonprofit with 30 members / friends, along with Rebecca Marin Anderson, who's my fellow chaplain, and some of my members / friends are sitting in the room. So I'm not only a parent to a neurotypical 7-year-old, I bring dad / big brother energy into like 25 plus other disability relationships, some of whom are in this room probably would wish I would bring a little less dad energy. But I came to my own disability knowledge very late. I've only been culturally disabled for about 15 years because I grew up in a largely able-bodied world, and God would not let me not do this. And believe me, guys, I tried to do anything else, and I just couldn't. I'll get into more of that later if asked, but yeah, that's the multivalence that I bring, and are complexifying each and every day, even in the last 12 hours or so. So yeah.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks so much. So I'm going to ask, the next two questions are just like very basic, very tied very literally to the subject of our panel today. So Molly, we'll start with you, if that's okay, and then we'll go Molly, Rebecca, Kim, Justin. And so I'm wondering, how has disability, yours or others, impacted how you give care? So how has that impacted how you give care?
I would say that I'm always giving care. I don't think that there's a time that I'm not giving care. I think because I've been so used to it, I've kind of trained myself to be a caregiver to whoever I come into contact with. Not saying that's a negative thing, but sometimes it can be. But yeah, I continuously am caring. Yeah.
So I thought of caregiving initially, and I actually, when we first talked about caregiving, I was like, wait, I said I would talk as a parent, not as a caregiver, and I'll get to why. Because when I think about caregiving, I think about all of the things like parenting and attachment parenting, and the exhaustion that comes with that. I think about meds, I think about doctors, I think about changing G tubes, I think about programming her AAC, all of those things that supported her body existing. And those aren't nothing, but I feel like for her, she really refined what caregiving meant for me. And I was grateful for sort of the redirect in preparing for this panel as well. I now kind of center caregiving as defending her access to, belonging in, and ability to impact the world. I'll tell you a story that I think is a little bit funny and may indicate some neurodivergence in me with the choices that I made. She had an IEP meeting, and she was at least cognitively typical, if not ahead of grade level, in as much as we could tell from the things she was able to communicate. She used an AAC because she lost the ability to control her tongue, and then she lost the ability to control her fingers. So we were trying to do eye gaze. And if you've ever tried eye gaze, whew, that's hard. So we aren't positive, but we think she's possibly cognitively advanced. But they wanted her, and one of her teachers wanted her in an isolated classroom, she said, because her disability and her accessibility tools would distract the other children. So I tried not to scream in that meeting, and went home and wrote an email in which I tried to be really inspirational, and the fact that I'm a pastor spilled over. But I told them that I believe in inclusion, in access, in empowerment, and in Jesus, in that order, as a pastor. And I told them, my mom had actually piloted our initial inclusion model of special ed in my town. And in the 5 years since she retired, they'd regressed. So it was extra painful, right? Because I grew up on this, like Sunday school and inclusion. And so I pushed that. And then I said, I don't know why anybody else has kids, but I had kids to participate in the bettering of the world, and I will defend her access to that. And I signed the IEP letter, the Reverend Rebecca Sumner. But she redefined that for me, and now I noticed that is actually how I try to give care to others. Like, maybe I bring you a coffee, but I bring you a coffee so you can show up. Maybe I sit and listen to you, but I sit and listen to you so you can belong. I'm hoping that my caregiving is always defending access, increasing belonging, and empowering impact.
I don't know about you. I would get that on a shirt, Rebecca. So if you're considering, how about you, Kim?
Yeah, I'm all about that. I'll get the Rebecca merch for sure. That's awesome. So I think my disability, and the way that it's impacted how I give care, it has, I have had friends who told me that I'm really good around boundaries, which is funny because I feel terrified around boundaries. But I realize that is a direct result of my disability. And when my energy's gone, my energy's gone. When the Adderall is done for the day, the brain is clocked out, and there's no bringing it back. And so having to make very realistic decisions based on, I can I can function between 8:30 a.m. and about 3 p.m. And if there's anything that happens on either end of that, I'm out. I end having, so my caregiving kind of the bulk of it needs to happen during that window. And and I believe strongly that especially as a pastor and a spiritual leader, if I hold to those boundaries and hold firm to them, then I give other people permission to do that as well. So that because we may be caring people, we may be giving people, but we are not unlimited. And so I think that is one of the things that where my disability has actually helped me a lot, has been to be very clear on my boundaries around saying yes and saying no. I could have been in the room with you all, and I have another experience that will be happening in the next few weeks that will require a lot of energy. And so I was like, had to exercise those boundaries of, okay, there are boundaries I have to set with myself all the time. I could go and have a lot of fun with everybody there, but also I don't want to show up pre-exhausted to an experience that's going to be wonderful, but is going to take a lot of energy. So I think that's how being a disabled person, how that disability has really changed and impacted how I give care. And I don't think it's for the worse. And then the other ways it shows up, I have realized as a parent that the expectations that I have for my kids can't be higher than the expectations I have for myself. And so my daughter, who was diagnosed with ADHD this year, had a gigantic stack of work she hadn't turned in and things that she had to do that in the spectacular way that many of us with ADHD do, waited till the last minute. And then got the extension and then waited till the last minute on the extension for the deadline and everything. And I realized I couldn't be on her and I needed to parent her the way that I parent myself, which is it's going to get done in the time that it gets done. And so it was a much easier task to get it done than if I had been on her every hour of the day, telling her to do it. And so I think that is also how my caregiving has to reflect the way that I care for myself, because it would be disingenuous if I parented her differently than my expectations for myself. And the homework got done and she got to be in math. So,
Yeah.
we're all very glad about that. But, it shows up when my other daughter got her diagnoses. And she called me on her way home from the doctor's office and said that she had been diagnosed with OCD and Tourette's. And I was just like, congratulations. And she was like, Mom, you're the only person who has said that. Everyone else has looked at me like tragedy has befallen me, and you're the only one. And she's like, thank you for congratulating me, because now I know what I'm working with, and I'm taking you out for sushi. So, it's the caregiving shows up when you are authentic with your own and knowing what your own boundaries and limits and the ways that you show up, and not having expectations of others that don't match what you would give to yourself. And then I think that
I'm going to ask you to make some space, Kim.
Yep. Sorry. I get very, very excited about it.
I know. I love it. I love it. I love it. How about you, Justin?
Can you repeat the question?
100%. So how has disability, yours or others, impacted how you give care?
Boy. Yes. I think the biggest the biggest sort of evolution I've needed to go through is an understanding of time, and in the Julian way, and shout out to Julian in Norwich. She'll get a lot of shouts out this week, I'm sure, if history is any indication. as I said, I was raised in an able-bodied world. My dad was great. I am experiencing a year since my dad passed. My dad was my biggest inspiration. He was a debate champion in high school and college, so I was a debate champion in high school and college. And my dad once said to me, "You can't expect to get anything for free. You're gonna have to be better than everybody else in the room to exist," which is real harsh. And I talk to my dad about my therapy bills every month, on repeat. But there was some good things about that as well, because it taught me to trust myself, trust my instincts, trust my ability to articulate for myself. But I had this insane conception of time and effort and energy, and it's only been since I've encountered others in the Julian way and in this space where I've learned about crypt time and moving and going at our own pace. So the biggest lesson I try to live with my people through, because I don't teach, they don't teach, we teach each other, we're community to one another, is it's important for me to be in every cultural space I can and move as slow as I need to move. Which means if it takes me 30 minutes to use the bathroom on my own in the middle of a meeting, people will live. And I see so many good examples of parenting in this room and in many spaces that I'm in, of my members who deal with multiple disabilities. But there's a lot of rough parenting examples or parents who don't really take the time to understand the complexity of being a disabled family. So that's how caregiving shows up for me most. And then there's the 7-year-old, which is a whole other experience.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it there for now. But really just encouraging people that their best is whatever they can bring to any room they're in at any moment. And sometimes that shifts and we have more best on some days than we do on other days, and that's fine. But be yourself and bring yourself, whatever that looks like from day to day, is sort of the way
Thanks, Justin.
that I care for my community.
Thanks, Justin. So I'm wondering, so we've talked about caregiving, and I think as Molly said, many of us feel like we're giving care all the time. So I want to ask about care receiving as well. And Rebecca, we'll start with you. And if I ever say we'll start with you and you're like, no, then just pass. We can come back. But so how has disability yours or others impacted how you receive care?
So this is where, in thinking about this question, my negativity bias came out really loud. It took preparing for this has been a really good spiritual practice. If you all are looking for a spiritual practice, so I'm going to share the negative, but I'm not going to end there. So many people in our lives ghosted us as her disability became more impactful on where we could be. Like when you want to go have a play date and mom says, okay, but wood chips, I know the ADA says it's accessible. It's not. You just cancel the play date, right? So we had just moved into a neighborhood where we were trying to create a community care based church, and we just watched that disintegrate as soon as something wasn't typical. And so the negative aspect of this is that it is really hard for me to trust care because I've watched it disappear. And I'm not going to stop there because I'm trying to honor her, and she wouldn't stop there. So I kept thinking, what would Liv want me to say? And I think that she would say that I have learned more about what I want to receive as care, the same things that I want to give. As somebody with pediatric medical traumatic stress, it's a real thing. You can look it up. My therapist didn't know about it. I had to teach her before she could treat it, as well as grief. I often receive pity, or I'm excluded, or people won't invite me to do hard work because it's probably too hard for you. Or they won't want to hear my stories about my kiddo because it's too hard for them. So I think I've experienced people attempting to be protective as they exclude me, either of themselves or me. And the same things that I try to give in care. I want access, I want belonging, and I want impact. And so in that way, I want to thank you all right now for caring for me by being in this room.
How about you, Kim?
So I think I don't really, I struggled with receiving care for a long time. I think with ADHD, there's a big sense of you're not enough because, you know, everything's a little bit, takes a lot longer. It's a little bit harder. You know, I know that a lot of us probably understand the sentiment of, you know, playing the video game on hard mode when everybody else is like basically going through the demo, you know, like so not really ever knowing how to ask for help or anything like that. It wasn't until I was part of the UCC Disabilities Ministries board that I started learning how to receive care and how to make space for that and no, and to even assume that I was worthy of receiving that care, because it's like, well, what did I actually do to deserve getting that care? I didn't work that hard on this project because I forgot about it until 10 minutes ago. But that 10 minutes of work were really great. But you know, and so it's incredible the difference of being in community with other people with a variety of disabilities. And the way that we care for each other is so different because it doesn't rely on what you did before you showed up. It doesn't rely on how much you got done or how or anything else. It's just being present with each other in the space, in the most of the time in the Zoom room, you know. And so it's I feel like I have gotten a lot better at receiving care and accepting help that I have no idea how to ask for. So since I've been part of a larger community of disabled folks.
Thanks, Kim. How about you, Justin?
So, so the biggest way that I receive care really two ways that I'll talk about very quickly. The two women that are sitting at the front table here, one my wife Lisa and the other my colleague and friend Rebecca Marin, both colluding with one another to hide my phone from me and shut off my email and make me stop. And say when I send a text message to a member after 5 p.m., getting text from Rebecca going, "What are you doing? Why are you still attending to this? This can hold." Teaching me every day that Sabbath is okay. And
Maybe I need a little touch for the break or for the I think someone's unmuted on the Zoom room. Could we mute folks on the Zoom room, please?
Okay.
Where that corner came Are we getting folks muted?
You know what? No, anything we can do?
I don't know, maybe defecto, I don't know.
Can you leave?
Are we able,
with us?
someone back there able to mute folks in the Zoom room?
What?
Put it in the garage or no? No needed.
Yeah, I think.
Joohi, you're unmuted. Could you mute yourself, please?
Can you leave it here with us?
Muted.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries, just leave it there.
Oh, okay.
That's fine for now. Yeah.
Is there anyone back there in the tech who can do the
Yeah,
muting?
okay.
The corner?
Yeah, I was gonna leave that, is that okay? Then we'd have some.
Can-
Looks like we're gonna leave them, but.
I'm not sure if someone can go back there and help with that.
There? Is that where you want me to sit?
Yeah.
That works?
Yeah.
Anything else would be, is it?
No, that's all.
Okay, yeah, I think it's complete, like, I think even the
Yeah.
words got moving around a bit. Thank you.
Does anybody have a joke? I have a joke, actually.
Yeah.
You did all of there and then now.
How
Yeah.
does
How many
a
did you
joke
replace?
become
You
a
replaced
dad
over here,
joke?
right?
No, replace only 2
It
words.
becomes
The broken,
apparent.
another one to take care of.
Oh,
Yeah,
those
this
are
is the same. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the same is no problem. I'll take
Any
care of
other
it
good
back.
jokes in the
Okay.
room?
Okay,
Just
okay.
make sure anyone
Yeah.
who's been waiting.
Okay.
just-
I got one.
Thank you.
You got one. Okay,
Yes,
what's
you
a
have a
good
good
joke?
day.
What
Thank
did
you,
the
you too.
mother
Thank you.
buffalo say to her son when he was crossing the road?
What, Molly?
Bye, son.
That's
That's a dad joke.
We're just about to go with anything. Okay,
But,
you need anything?
Oh Lord. Okay.
Okay. He was saying
That's
touch
a
up,
good
but
one,
I don't know,
that's
should
a
I
good
bug
one,
Ashley
Molly.
for the patch pain or? In the pantry. Yeah, I don't know. It
other
looked to me like he did more
jokes.
than that, but maybe I don't know what I was.
This
I
is
just got here a couple
this is the
times.
time.
I can tell if Liv was here, this is the one she would tell, but it's sappy.
Yeah, please tell it.
What did one volcano say to the other? I lava you.
I love you.
Oh wow.
Are we tech folks back there? Are we good?
You know, we were being picky about it, we should ask. We should have asked.
No admin online. Interesting. It looks like Greg is a host. Is Greg back there? All right, Greg's coming. We're on crypt time, folks. That is okay. I'm seeing a comment in the chat that says the sound is louder for the Zoom speakers than the panelists.
I don't know, I think it looks.
I totally
it looks
believe
all right.
that.
I will wipe it down.
See above.
All right, see above. We are so close. Everybody is being so patient and flexible. What did the mom coffee say to the baby coffee?
Come through for this final stage.
I love you a latte. All right,
What did,
there we
what
go.
did baby corn? Oh, I was
Oh,
like, I
say it,
finally
Kim.
have.
Say it, Kim.
Oh, what did baby corn say to mama corn?
What,
Where's
Kim?
popcorn? Where's popcorn? That's the
Where's
only joke I know. I
popcorn?
can't remember jokes. I've had that one since high school.
That was really good, Kim. All right, thanks, folks. We are back. Justin, I think you were mid answer.
I was, and I'll be very, very quick. So I'm gonna go a slightly different direction and say another way, excuse me, that I received care is I love soccer. It's my favorite sport. So if you see me looking down at my phone, your panels are great, and I am watching the World Cup. It'll be on mute, and I love you. I belong to the Liverpool Supporters Club of DFW. I go about 3 times a year. Those people do not know what I do for a living unless they ask, and I'm fine with that. I go on Sundays, and that's a space where I can completely step away from my disability advocacy work, or I can engage with it with people who have money and really need to know what I do, but it's my choice. And giving myself that space to not always embody I embody it in a way where I do it for a living is a really good practice for myself. So that's another way I receive care. But we'll, since our interlude there, we'll move on down
Yeah.
the road.
Thanks, Justin. How about you, Molly?
So I would say that it's hard for me to receive care, just because I'm so used to being the caregiver, and just from the experiences that I've had, I'm more skeptical to receiving care. So yes.
You want to say a little more about that, Molly? Because I think this is a really important perspective for folks in the room to have, especially people who rely or partner a lot with government agencies or medical systems. Molly, I think this is a really important thing that you're bringing.
Yes. So throughout the medical journey with my daughter, there has been instances where we have been, I guess, discriminated against, you could say, because we're Native American. There was a time when my daughter we were in the beginning of doing her feedings, and thickening them. And this was the 4th time we had come back to the hospital. First time after finding out she was aspirating liquids. And they implied that I was doing something wrong with her feedings, and that's why she was in the hospital. You know, once I made a complaint, of course, you know, they were apologetic and said that, you know, stuff shouldn't have been said to me like that. But that was just like the beginning of what I was in for and how I was to be cared for. So because of that, I'm very skeptical for when I go into new situations with medical people or anywhere. And it has a lot to do too with historical trauma, of Native Americans not trusting the government, not trusting the federal government, because of what has been done to us. And I do believe that, you know, it's in our DNA, you know, that these things have happened to us, and now we still feel those from generations before. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Molly. That's super important. I want to really build on that and talk about, so in caregiving and care receiving and the experiences you've heard today, there are some real gaps between the caregiving and the care receiving for disabled folks and folks who love them. And so I'm wondering, for folks, and Justin, I think we're back to you to kick it off. So what has worked well to fill a potential gap in your experience of caregiving and care receiving? Or what has really been a gap that you've seen? So another way you can think of it is what has enabled your thriving in caregiving and care receiving, or what would you have needed to thrive?
For all of the for all of the things I've said about the way I was brought up and the some gaps there, I can't thank my parents enough, because they were very stubborn people. And my mom especially was like, no, my son will be mainstreamed because he is capable of that. And I will yell and scream and condole and bribe and whatever I need to do to make that happen. So inborn persistence has always been a thing that I can rely on and have relied on. So that's helped me help others like learn to, you know, the 7th no. I understand the trauma of that, but we got to keep asking the question. and the reverse of that, the gap that I've seen, especially in ecclesiastical bodies that I'm a part of, I'm the beginning my second or in the middle of my second quadrennium as the legislative chairperson for the Disability Committee of the United Methodist Church, which means I write and shepherd legislation, which is about the most cat herding activity I've ever done in my life. The amount of times that I have had the conversation of, we're so glad you brought this forward. Thank you for doing this, et cetera, over a decade and a half. And like 20 minutes later, the same person will commit the same mistake in a room. I'm like, guys, we literally just talked about this. You're now the example I'm going to use when I talk. So, I love my church. My toenails are Wesleyan. But I'm so tired of dealing with religious bodies that get it and then completely collapse at the first hurdle. But we keep asking the question. So,
How about you, Molly? Something that's filled the gap or caused the gap?
I would say medical or wherever not having cultural competency and having knowledge of the people that they're treating. I feel that if more places were to have that, I think that we would have a better system of helping people. Accepting people for who they are and not judging them. That's where I think that the gap needs to be filled, and it needs to be across the board. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go negativity bias and talk about the gaps, but then I'm going to talk about what did work too. Because again, my kiddo, that would be her. So there's structural and societal exclusion that are huge, right? Like the trying to put her in an isolated classroom. The fact that we say wood chips are ADA accessible. You can build an ADA accessible playground and you get the exact same as a point system for building a playground. You get the exact same points for wood chips as you do for an actual rollable flat. But it's much more expensive to make that. So why would you, right? Like something like that. And then that creates social exclusion because what playground can I go to for a play date, right? So there's those things. And on our research, and one of the biggest causes of mental health problems in children with disability is exclusion. One of the best interventions is inclusion, right? So it's pretty easy. Another thing that has been hard is sort of the deification of disability parents. Like, oh, she's so lucky she has you. You're so strong. You can do anything. My body can't do anything. When she needs meds every 2 hours, so I don't get more than 2 hours of sleep, no. If you really are so inspired by the work that I'm doing, come let me take a nap, right? I think that's a significant barrier. I also, as we're talking about doctors, it dawned on me, I'm a part of a study right now in palliative care with particularly kids impacted by neurological disability. We dehumanize people whose bodies work differently, especially when they have communication barriers. And there's actually been studies to show that doctors treat children, particularly who are not able to speak by mouth, differently. I watched one doctor talk in front of my kiddo about her death as a blessing, as though she couldn't hear.
Oh.
Because he dismissed her. And that's like the biggest gap, just trauma for fun almost. And something that's positive there is that people are piloting, particularly at Seattle Children's, and they're hoping to export it, a system where when you first open your medical record system, when a doctor first opens it up, what they get is the story that you tell about your kid, that your kid helps you tell, with pictures of every wonderful thing you do together to humanize. So I think there is some work being done to humanize. And if you are a medical parent, bring pictures. I didn't know about this. Bring pictures and a storyboard of who your kid is when you go to the hospital. Studies show you will get better care. And that sucks because like you don't get that. They don't tell you to bring that to the ER. So then what I want to say did work well is just a really positive story. The dance school that I went to as a kid changed their motto to everyone can dance. And when I saw that, I like, oh, they must be accessible now. So I emailed them and I was like, hey, I'd love to sign my kid up. She uses a wheelchair. Have you solved the stair situation? Oh, well, no, it's a historic building and we're a small nonprofit. We can't afford to do that. I'm so sorry. And I'm a warm, lovey person. Don't get me sending an email. It just, so I emailed back sort of understanding. I said, like, I get it. I work at a nonprofit and praise literal Jesus, they made it accessible to begin with. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to afford to, right? I was like, I get it. And could you change your motto then? Because you can't say anyone can dance when someone can't. And the dance school executive director, who's now one of my best friends, solved it. She said, we're going to rent ground floor space and your daughter's going to dance. And one of the most breathtaking videos of her is dancing with this woman. I thought that I would need to be there to move her body. And she said, I got it. And she moved her so gently. She was in a lot of pain at the time. She included her. And because of her, that started a 2-year campaign to buy the downstairs floor. So that's where there's not a gap. That's what has worked.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. Sorry, this is Ben in the back. Just explaining a moment. Our manual captioner actually got the time zones flipped, and it was only booked for noon Eastern. So we're currently using captions that are Zoom automatic generated. So we want to be respectful of folks' time. I think this would be great for 2 questions for Q&A, 5 minutes each question, one online and one in person. And then after that, we're going to transition to the photo, and we're also going to include folks on the Zoom screen behind us. So we'll have a whole hybrid conference photo. So please feel free to stick around if you're on Zoom. And if you'd like to show your wonderful face, we'd love to get a photo. On that note, Allison, I'll pass it back to you for leading our 2-question Q&A.
Sure. I'm wondering if we could get a couple extra minutes, Ben, because we have the tech glitch that threw us off. Is that I just want to make sure Kim gets to answer this question and then we can have 2 questions. Is that okay?
Sure. Let's do 5 minutes for Kim and then 2 questions for so 15 minutes in total.
That's great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep. Kim, just any kind of last things you want to say about filling the gap or where the gap's been for you?
You know, the gap was extra gappy when my partner Paul died. He was so special and was going to be my person forever, and we were going to become family. And when he passed, the biggest thing I noticed was that the compassion in the care I received, pastoral care from friends, care from people at church, the compassion was there, but the competency was not. And Molly, you mentioned that competency is an issue, and it's people struggle to talk about disability in the first place, and they struggle to talk about death. And so that's where I really noticed that there was a huge need for more resources maybe, or something for pastoral care. So that's really all I have to say on it. Is the biggest gap that I've really seen was the things that people feel comfortable saying that it's like, oh, that should have been an inside thought, or the platitudes that are already crummy in non-disabled situations of death, but are so much worse and feel so much more hollow and don't help. And so I think that in caregiving, our families when we are facing a loss, and we all try to care for one another, and we have our ways of dealing with that. But I think that we need to increase, I think, just the capacity for how we talk about disability and death and everything, so that when we have a loss, we can talk about it in ways that are honoring and feel like they honor the whole person that we've lost, instead of some really crummy ableist platitudes.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks to our amazing panelists. We had a couple other questions prepared. So if you'd like to come find them at another time and ask them about their spirituality and religious experience, or ask them about the world they dream for disabled people, I encourage you to do that. They have prepared thoughts about it, and I would love them to be shared. But in the meantime, we will take 2 questions, one in person and one online. Here are some invitations for your question. You will know you're asking a question because it will end in a question mark. If you instead have a comment or a story to share, I invite you to do that one-on-one at a later time. I encourage you to ask questions that multiple panelists can answer. So instead of asking a question to a specific person, ask a question to the group. And of course, panelists can decline to answer any question for any reason. No questions asked. These can get pretty personal. With that, is there a question in the in-person room? And is there someone with a mic in the back? Yes, someone with a mic in the back. A question in the in-person room. I'll give a minute. Is there a question online? Oh, there's one question in the room here. One question in the room over here. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for your comments. My question was around what does that process look like when the condition progresses and the caregiving needs change? How do you manage and navigate those changes, and doing that without losing a sense of yourself in the process?
So I think I didn't do it without losing a sense of myself. I feel like I lost bits of myself little by little. And that's hard. And I think one of the things that's been really powerful to me is a friend of mine with disability who has helped me sort through, what do we do with grief when she acquires more disabilities? How do I grieve that I could hear her voice and now I can't? Without being ableist? How do I grieve her pain and her exclusion without grieving that she's a disabled child? And I don't have the answers. I try really, really hard. But I'm really grateful for conversation partners who can hold that really difficult space with me. And I know that I'm blanking on names. Kim has a lot to say about that too.
Yeah, so I don't think that just like with Rebecca, I don't think that I was able to hold on to, as you know, because things in our case, things changed rapidly. It was about 2 weeks where things were, were routine, the normal, and then trying to figure out what the new normal was, and there was never a new normal established. And so each piece really did took time to figure out what it would look like, and just the flexibility of not knowing how things would be on the other end of the hospital visit on this one. And at the same time, I think the biggest one, and this is more true, I think, of adult disabled relationships than like a parent-child. So, partner to partner. I had promised him at the get-go that I would trust, I would not ever panic, and I would not ever assume that was happening, and I would never ask for a status update. because those things would stress him out. And so trusting that until I hear from his mom, or until, you know, the like we had like the well, things have progressed to a certain point. But really trusting that he knew his body, but more importantly, he knew how he wanted me to show up for him while he was experiencing what was going on with his body, and all of the unknowns, as he was in those last few weeks, and respecting that and just showing up the same way I had for the relationship before, where it was, you know, it's like, okay, well, what do you need today? I need some really bad jokes. I need can you send me some memes? What do you know, like, and showing up in ways that didn't make him feel like there was any extra burden placed on his healing, because he was going into this already disabled. But instead, you know, this is part of how we're doing things. And so, and that was an agreement that we'd made beforehand. And I'm so glad that we'd had a robust conversation around what do we do when I'm in the hospital? We'd had a very robust conversation ahead of time. So I knew exactly what my role was and how I needed to show up for him. And I showed up for him in that way till the end.
Thanks, Kim. Wondering if we have a question online.
Yes, we do. Thank you all so much. Related to what Kim is just saying, we have a question from Tamara, who is wondering if y'all have a couple thoughts around the term caregiver itself. She notes how she learned from the Alzheimer's community about the term care partner. And she wonders, as humans, we all have things to offer, even children. And so she's wondering about your reaction to this term. And we have just a few minutes, so if y'all can say a few sentences.
Yeah. I wonder if Molly and Justin would give you to the first opportunity, and then Kim or Rebecca.
I like that term in general principle, because I think